Believe it right now that we shall. Hey. Yeah, deep, 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 deep in my heart, yeah. We shall overcome. Can I get somebody clapping it? Well, well, we shall. Oh, Lord. I still believe that. Yeah. Oh, deep in my heart, oh, we shall overcome. One more time, say we shall. Yeah, we shall. Oh, we shall. Yeah, deep. Oh, I believe that we shall. Yeah.
Welcome to the Rainbow Push Coalition. We thank all of our viewers all around the world watching us on Impact Network. We thank all of you who watch us on rainbowpush.org. We thank all of you who are watching us live on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you for tuning in each and every week. I want you to stay tuned. Tell your friends they can catch this broadcast on the Impact Network on cable. They can go to rainbowpush.org and connect through social media to this broadcast. We thank all of you for continuing to watch us. We have just a few announcements, and you'll see some other announcements later. We're praying especially for those in the hurricane zone. We're praying for those in the Philippines who are facing storms as well. And we want to welcome to Push today our international guest from Uganda, Pastor Robert Mahuzama from Uganda, Africa. He currently presides over 60 churches in the area and runs an orphanage. We've had him here before. We support his work in Uganda. And then we want to remind you that in October we will be in Detroit for the Automotive Summit, but also our outstanding oratorical competition will be launched in Detroit, Michigan in October, and we are excited about Judge Hill expanding the oratorical to each one of our satellite cities. Pastor Uganda, would you sit in the front row today as our very special guest? And now we want the choir to come to you in a special musical selection, Maurice Mahan and the Push Choir.
Come on, let's put those hands together like it's Sunday morning. We're going to take it back if you don't mind. Hey, here we go. I love to praise him. I love to praise his name. I love to praise him.
I love to praise his name.
I love to praise him.
I love to praise his name.
Oh, I love to praise. Come on.
His holy
One more time. I love to praise him.
I love to praise
thank Mehan and the choir for that powerful selection. And now I want you to turn your attention to the screens. Those of you who are in the audience, we have some special announcements and report for you.
On a Saturday morning forum.
I am somebody. I am somebody. Respect me. Protect me. Stop the violence. Save the children. Stop the violence.
David is recovering from traumatic brain injury sustained in 2016.
If you can talk with crowds and keep your virtue, and walk with kings and never lose the common touch, if neither foes nor loving friends can hurt you, if all men count with you but none too much, if you can fill the unforgiven minute worth the 60 seconds worth the distance run, yours is the earth and everything that's in it, and which is more, you'll be a man, my son.
The last negotiating time we met, at 1 o'clock they said we are through meeting. So we are in limbo. We have no contract, we have no respect, and they don't understand why we're in the street. Well, we're in the street because we are fighting for respect.
Human dignity is a human right. We want livable wages, we want workers' rights, we want health care, we want civic protection, we want constitutional policing, we want...
Welcome back. That was a brief recap of last week's program. We focused in large measure on the Unite Here strike that is hitting hotels across this city and perhaps even around the nation. But so many of the workers who clean the rooms, serve the food, tend the bar, work the banquets at 26 hotels in Chicago are now on strike because they don't have health care. The young man who was here last week outlined how many of them are carrying terminal illnesses, and yet they are forced to work and still do not have the ability to get appropriate health treatment and certainly cannot afford to be hospitalized. And so we stand with those workers, and we urge you to do the same. We're asking you to support the picket and not cross the picket line at any of the hotels. And you can go to Unite Here and their website to get the listing of hotels. But when you see the signs, we urge you not to cross the picket line. Many of you have been watching the Kavanaugh hearings. Judge Kavanaugh has been before the Senate Judiciary Committee looking to, since September 4th, raising questions about his fitness and the viability of having him added to the United States Supreme Court. And so many of the legal associations like the National Bar Association and the NAACP strongly oppose Judge Kavanaugh's nomination based on the recommendation by President Trump 45. The full Senate Judiciary Committee is scheduled to vote on the nomination on Thursday, September 20th, in its executive session. The vote was originally scheduled to be held on September 13th, but the rules of the Senate Judiciary Committee allow any committee member to ask for a delay. Chairman Chuck Grassley scheduled a delay after Senator Blumenthal from Connecticut made it clear that there was significant opposition to Kavanaugh's confirmation. And so we're urging you to simply call your United States Senator. Every state has two. Call your senators and ask them to stand in opposition to Kavanaugh's appointment. The other thing is we notice that many of our young people have had a prayer vigil, or not just a prayer vigil, but a vigil outside of 26 in California as a part of their protest around the Laquan McDonald case. And you may remember that's the young man that was shot 16 times by a Chicago police officer. The case will go to trial. It will start on Monday. The jury has been selected. There's only one African American on the jury. And so we thank Will Calloway and the young people who are there every day. 3 people are allowed from that coalition to sit and observe the proceedings. They were there every day of jury selection last week. They are outside of 26 in California, and they are visiting the courtroom on a daily basis. We urge every church to pray for justice on tomorrow and every day next week. All of you who are watching, we want justice for Laquan McDonald, that Van Dyke might be found guilty, and that Van Dyke does not seek a change of a substitution of judges and a change of venue even now in this case. Now, voter registration. Reverend Jackson's been talking about voter registration, the power of our vote. I don't know that all of us are aware of the number of people that are running around the country that can change the way America looks and make America representatives in state office as well as in federal office be as diverse as we are. We have an African American running for these positions: Ben Jealous, in Maryland for governor; Mike Espy, U.S. Senate from the state of Mississippi; Stacey Abrams for governor in the state of Georgia; Andrew Gillum for governor in Florida; Sean Shaw for attorney general in Florida; Letitia James, New York State Attorney General; Ayanna Pressley for U.S. Congress in Massachusetts; Alexandria Ocasio, United States Congress in New York. These are just a few of the seats that we can obtain if we simply register and vote our strength. And I know, I'm just going to give you a few states. Alabama, we have 935,440 eligible African American voters. Florida, 1,990,530 African American voters. Georgia, 2,164,305 eligible African Americans. Kentucky, 248,975. This is just African Americans. Mississippi, 795,780. New York, 1,916 African American voters eligible. We have the power if we just have the faith and if we move to turn out our vote. Well, some of you say, well, some of us have been taken off the rolls. Well, here's what you do. We need you to go to one of our voting sites, and they will help you check to see if you are still on the rolls. Go to ourvote.com. Go to ourvote.vote.org. Go to vote.org right now, vote.org, to see, am I still registered? What should I do if they've removed my name from the polls? Do it now before November 6th. Now, several people have been incarcerated in states around the country. Some states like Illinois will restore you to your citizenship and allow you to vote once you served your time. You may need to find out, can I vote in the state where I'm living? Go to restoreyourvote.org, restoreyourvote.org. And I just want to stop and congratulate some millennials. Many people say the key to this election is the millennial vote. Well, and they say, well, the millennials are not interested. They are excited. They are moving. The reason we have Kim Foxx in the state's attorney's office is because young people decided to shut down Michigan Avenue on Good Friday. I want to thank the millennials. They are out there. They are acting. They are at 26th Street every single day, come rain or come shine. Well, the millennials didn't just do it in Cook County. It's around the country. Young people are taking to the streets in nonviolent protests saying we're demanding our share and our accountability. Now we're going to have a change in how the police deal with us. The Laquan McDonald case is an example, but we now are going to have a consent decree for police accountability in Chicago. Why? Because these young people have been pushing the envelope. And so change is coming. Every time you protest, and every time we march, and every time we vote, change will come. protested caused the release of the tapes. We know what happened to Laquan because we saw 16 shots and a cover-up. And so I say to you, just like we did the vote, we can do just like we changed that, we're gonna march to the polls in great numbers. Young people are gonna march because they're tired of student loan debt. Young people will march because they need funding for education. Mothers will march because they need certain kind of health care. They need daycare. Mothers are gonna march to the polls. We don't have to worry. We're gonna change Illinois. We're gonna change this nation. We're gonna change the Congress. Women are gonna vote in great numbers. Black women are gonna vote. Why? Because we're running for office. We're gonna change in November and come back in Chicago in February. I wish I had more time, but Jonathan's got so much to tell you. I'm telling you, if you're interested in our voter mobilization, our GOTV, if you want to be a part of this November 6th move, you need to meet us at PUSH next Saturday. One final thing as I get ready to introduce our young oratorical person. You know, we've been protesting, and so many people say we need more investment in our neighborhoods, and that's something that Jonathan's going to tell us about today. We're going to get the investment because we're going to shut down any construction in our neighborhoods that doesn't work. Watch us this Tuesday. We'll be on the street, Omar Sharif and all of our workers. We're shutting it down. If we're not there, we're going to cut you out. Nobody works if we're not working. Not going to see cranes flying and nobody that looks like me holding the flag. One more flaggers training before the end of the year. You better not miss this one. This is it. Thursday, we're going to be holding the flag, digging the hole, going up on the ladder, coming down. We will be in construction. And now, I'm so proud to introduce, where's Joshua? Oh, Joshua, come on. Joshua Chalupa, senior at Chicago Military Academy, and he will recite his creative compilation of A Mother to Son and a Dream Deferred, What Becomes of a Dream Deferred by Langston Hughes. Joshua has been with us. He grew up at Rainbow Push. Joshua.
Good morning. This morning I will be reciting my creative compilation of A Mother to Son and a Dream Deferred by Langston Hughes, along with excerpts from I Have a Dream by the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Well, son, I'll tell you. Life for me ain't been no crystal stair. It's had tacks in it and splinters and boards torn up. But all the time, I still been climbing on, reaching landings and turning corners, and even sometimes going in the dark, places where there ain't even been a stitch of light. But all the time, I still been climbing on. So boy, don't you turn back. Don't you sit down on the steps because you find it's kind of hard. Don't you fall now, because I'm still climbing on the glory. And always remember, life ain't gonna be no crystal stair. But mama, what happens to a dream deferred? Does it dry up like a raisin in the sun? Or does it fester like a sore and then run? Does it crust and sugar over like a syrupy sweet? Or does it sag there like a heavy load? Or does it explode? Mama, I'm still curious, what happens to a dream deferred? Excuse me. Well, son, I honestly don't know. But all I can tell you is life ain't gonna be no crystal stair. Mama, I was wondering because I had a dream that this nation will one day live out the true meaning of its creed, that all men are created equal, and the sons of former slaves and the sons of former slave owners will one day be able to sit down together at the table of brotherhood, and little children will one day not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. And this will be the day when all of God's children will be able to sing, join hands and sing in the words of the old Negro spiritual, free at last, great God Almighty, we are free at last. Now, I urge you, this speech was, I said this speech to remind you, go register to vote. And if you are not, if you're going to be 18 by November, the election day, please, still, you can register to vote. And this speech was also dedicated to Reverend Jackson, my hero, in his absence. Thank you.
Thank you, Joshua. Give him a round of applause. You heard it from him. Go register and get ready to vote. And now for our education update. Dr. Sonia Whitaker, you've seen her before. She's the Associate Superintendent at the Harvey Public School District. We always look forward to her coming and sharing education information.
Good morning, good morning. Thank you to Reverend Jackson and the Rainbow Push Coalition. I'd also like to pay special recognition to the Harvey School District 152 Board of Education on behalf of Board President Ms. Janet Rogers and Board Vice President Ms. Casey Nesbitt for the work that is being done in the district on behalf of children. I also want to invite everyone on behalf of the Board of Education to our Back to School Parade, which starts like right now and goes on till 3 o'clock. It's sponsored by Harvey School District 152 and Frank Zuccarelli. Again, the Back to School Parade is pretty massive, free food, lots of amazing things going on from now until 3 o'clock this afternoon. We'd love to see you there. My goal today is to bring your attention to the federal law referred to as the ESSA law, or the Every Student Succeeds Act. I want to make you aware that the Every Student Succeeds Act was signed into law by President Obama in 2015 and is actually being enacted effective this school year. What a part of this particular law requires is that all states in our country submit comprehensive plan of actions for how they are going to ensure that all students, regardless of their background, are college and career ready by the time that they graduate from high school. So again, I know we have a broad listening audience, regardless of what state you're in right now. As of just a few weeks ago, the U.S. Department of Education approved the ESSA plans for every state in our country. So I would highly urge educators and those of us who are passionate about what's happening in our schools to find out what is in the plan of action that your state said that they were going to implement to create for more equitable learning environments for the students. With that being said, I'd also like to draw your attention to the Illinois version of the ESSA plan. In the state of Illinois, there are several things that officials said were going to happen. I want to make you aware of them so you know what to look for when you go to the polls and as you begin the very tough decision of deciding who you want to represent you. In the state of Illinois, as a part of that plan, hot off the press, effective just a few weeks ago, every school, so even if you don't have a child in school, it affects your neighborhood. Every school in our state received what is referred to as a designation. The schools in your neighborhood received, and it will be available for public viewing on the school report cards by October the 1st. And they've received one of 4 designations. They are either Designation 1, Designation 2, Designation 3, and Designation 4. For the purpose of time, I will share that Designation 1 is exemplary school, and Designation 2 is deemed as a commendable school. I want to draw your attention to Designations 3 and 4. If the schools in your community are labeled Designation 3 and Designation 4, again, this is just hot off the press this fall, then it is important to know that those schools are deemed underperforming, or schools in which students are at risk of not making the academic gains that they're capable of making. The reason why I want to draw your attention, I'm going to take a sidebar for a second and ask this year that we turn our energies towards supporting educators. Because I have to tell you that this week I spent some time with teachers who paid money out of their pocket to be with me until 8 o'clock at night because they wanted support as it relates to meeting the needs of your students. So when we walk out of here and we find out that our schools are designated 3 and 4, we want to know what is supposed to happen as a result of that, and I'm here to tell you If a school is designated 3 or 4, then the state has promised and turned into the federal government a document in the form of ESSA, the ESSA plan that says we are going to provide additional financial supports to those schools that are in need of support. So you want to know if that's happening. I also want to tell you that on the financial side of the house, as it relates to the ESSA or the Every Student Succeeds Act, is for the first time ever, this is really big, for the first time ever, the federal government is requiring that all school districts, not just in the state of Illinois, report to them how they are spending the money in a very unique way. The goal is to ensure more equitable spending. So what does that mean in layman's terms? That means that at the federal government level, they're saying it is no longer okay to receive federal dollars and then pick the best schools within your school district and make sure that they continue to get the most money. That is no longer okay. The goal of the financial part of this particular bill is to ensure that schools within school districts like the Chicago Public School System that have the most need actually get the most resources, and it now requires that the school districts report that. In summary, my challenge to you is go to the polls and vote. Find out what the people who are running for office are interested in supporting relevant to early childhood. Find out if they're going to support the implementation of more social workers in our schools, and find out if they're running for re-election, what bills were put on the table in our state in Springfield that they voted for and against, and whether or not they are truly, truly, truly in alignment with our goal to ensure that our students are prepared for success in school, but ultimately for success in life. Thank you very
much. Just want to announce a couple of dedications. We're dedicating this broadcast to 3 families. One to our own Azaleen Brad. Her services will be at Push on Tuesday morning. Push headquarters, 10 o'clock and 11 o'clock. We're also dedicating this broadcast to the family of Ken Smikle, who made his transition this week. His services will be next Saturday morning at the Chicago Temple downtown. We're praying for the family of Derek Taylor, president of the Black McDonald Owners and Operators, on the passing of his family member. And now it is my pleasure to introduce our national spokesperson. You already know he's going to bring it. He's going to talk about major reinvestment in the neighborhoods, and he'll explain economically what we're missing. Won't you stand and greet warmly Jonathan Luther Jackson.
Yeah. Some say my future not that bright. Oh. Some say I'm useless, unholy, and not living right. But at the beginning of the day, I look in the mirror and say, I am somebody. Oh, I believe the future's in my hands. I tell every girl, boy, woman, or man, if I can think it, I can believe it, create it and achieve it. So I am somebody. Oh, I am somebody. Oh, I am somebody. I may be down but not destroyed, empty but not void, 'cause I am somebody. Oh, I am somebody. Look at your neighbor and say, I am somebody. God made me at the end of this day, like Reverend would say, I am somebody. One more time, say, oh, I am somebody. God made me, so I am. Yeah. And turn and walk away, but at the end of this day, sing, I am somebody.
Thank you, Rainbow Push. I'd like to give a very special thank you for all of those in television land and radio land that continue to hold my father in prayer. He is continuing with his regiment. And then I'd like to also say thank you to the Congressional Black Caucus. He will be an honoree tonight for a lifetime of achievement for service, and it is an honor to be recognized. In the words of Reverend Clay Evans, give people their flowers while they can still smell them and enjoy them. So congratulations, Dad, stay on the case. And like many of you, I saw the U.S. Open last week. I'd like to say a very much congratulations to the current champion, Naomi Osaka, the first Haitian Asian winner of the U.S. Open. And if you don't know, continued success to the Williams family. Serena Williams, I am so impressed with Mr. Williams, Miss Williams, Serena and Venus. I thought Serena had the right amount of righteous indignation and said the right words at the right time. And she says she has a daughter, and you cannot accuse her of doing something that was unethical. So congratulations to her. Ladies and gentlemen, today is September 15th. I would like to talk about reliving versus remembering. September 15th, reliving versus simply remembering. This is a day that we should not only remember, but we must relive. It was September 15th, 1963, 10 a.m. at the 16th Street Baptist Church in Birmingham, Alabama, where Dynamite Bob, known by the local Klansmen, bombed the 16th Street Church. Well, unfortunately, some churches will never be a threat. Unfortunately, some churches will never even be considered the epicenter of social activity. So we congratulate and we remember the churches that made a difference. This church was at the height of the Montgomery at the Birmingham fight for civil rights. Can you imagine if all of our churches stood up and fought for our civil rights? And what do I mean by civil rights? It becomes a cliche and some people don't want to use the term anymore. Civil is short for civilian rights, the rights we have as citizens. What's good for us has been good for all to make America better. September 15th is a day that we should relive, that not only were 4 girls on their youth day in their women's bathroom bombed and killed. We're not going to see that on major media. It's not a day that they care about. But the problem is, ladies and gentlemen, if we don't remember and we don't teach it to our children, that's a shame on us. We must remember and relive the pain, not to be buried in the misery, but to have it as a call, as a springboard for action because of the pain we feel. Pain can also motivate you to do something. We have to do more than just remember, we have to relive so we can re-energize ourselves. Why is teen suicide on the rise? Because our children don't remember, they've never been taught. If they understood where we came from, if they relived some of that pain and used it in a positive way, they would have the fuel in their soul to keep on keeping on. Reliving versus remembering, a call to action. Second point I want to say is September 15th, 2008. This is the 10th year anniversary of the largest bankruptcy in American history. Lehman Brothers that started in Montgomery, Alabama, trading slaves, human beings that were called property. They collapsed September 15th, 2008. Why is it important to remember the nation's largest bankruptcy? $600 billion. What happened? With all alacrity and due speed, the federal government, from the White House to the Treasury, the Federal Reserve and the Congress, came together and gave all of the resources that the financial sector needed to be made whole. 10 years later, those banks that were too big to fail are now even bigger. Remember, ladies and gentlemen, Frankenstein was the doctor, not the monster. The people that have now reorganized the financial institution have created something that's going to be even a bigger mess and calamity into the future. The banks that used to control the top 5 banks in 1990 had roughly the same asset size now of one of the 5 largest banks. 5 banks today control 44% of $15 trillion of our banking assets. Just 5 banks. Only 3 out of the nation's 5 largest banks are controlling 70% of all of the mortgages. When the financial industry got reconfigured, we got left out, ladies and gentlemen. We need a big deal and a new deal to bring all Americans along. Why do you think it's so that in Memphis, the school system and the buildings are in shambles? Why do you think in Baltimore it was so hot the children had to be sent home because there was no air conditioning? The children in Philadelphia had rain pouring in through their school buildings. We never saw reinvestment take place in urban America. Reliving versus simply remembering. We need a call to action. The city of Chicago has 150,000 empty seats. When Mayor Rahm Emanuel closed 50 elementary schools, now guess what that means? You're going to have empty high schools because where do the children go? This would be called ethnic cleansing in any other part of the world. I want us to remember so we can relive, so we can have some energy to be renewed. Lehman Brothers. Now that we've had the paper to be rescued and resuscitated, Wall Street is at a new high, and our cities are at a new low. This is a war on the poor. We need to have a war against poverty, not taking war to those that have no money. People are working harder for less. You heard Dr. Whitaker tell you about teachers digging deeper in their own purses. The average salary for a teacher has gone down in 40 years. I not only want you, grandmothers and grandfathers, don't tell me about retirement. Retirement has no place in the Bible. Why don't you show up at the school where your grandchild is going and go in the building? Start by dressing the child. Start by praying with the child. Start by taking the child. Then do one other thing. Go inside the building and see what Jim Crow is doing to your child. They've resuscitated the banks, reinvigorated, refortified them. But look at the schools. Can you call it a school if you don't have a music instructor? Can you call it a school if you don't have a gym teacher? Can you call it a school if you don't have a librarian? Can you call it a school if you don't have a counselor for some child to talk to? Can you call it a school if you don't have a speech therapist? Can you call it a school if the children can't be met with the food that they need? Can you call it a school if you've got it locked into the budget where you have police greeting our children? Ladies and gentlemen, that is a pre-penitentiary program, not an educational school. We have to remember what happened to the girls in Birmingham. Children were bombed. That's the height of savagery. But if we don't care about it, if we don't call to the local news, call into the program directors and say, why have you not shared this story again? We know when John Lennon died. We know when Elvis died. We put everybody else's pain above our own. We have to tell the story. We're never going to forget 9/11. We should never forget September 15th. If our children don't know better, Brother Jedediah, how can they do better? If we're not instrumentally involved in the development of the curriculum, the teaching of what's important, your child is going to know all about September 11th, and they should. Malcolm X had something to say about it too. Some things have come home to roost. You can't perpetuate wars all around the world and not think it's going to come back home. Why not be a peace warrior? Why not give peace a chance? You can't keep bombing in Syria, bombing in Yemen, bombing in Libya, bombing all over Africa, and don't think that the children of those persons that lost their families aren't going to have animosity and anger towards America. We need to go in another direction. We have to challenge the financial institutions of our day, ladies and gentlemen. We are now living in an economic desert on the south side, the west side, not only here in Chicago, but across urban America. Now we have these laws for a minority business set aside, but they never get enforced. Now they want us to get an MBE, a minority business certification. Then they want you to have a women's business certification. Then they want you to have a DBE for a disadvantaged business certification. Certification, 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 and we still get no business. When the state of Illinois had given less than 1% of its contracts to African Americans in road building and construction, something is wrong. It's not simply the unions we have a challenge there, but there are four legs on that seat that we're going to have to be very cognizant of. We have to challenge the unions, of course. They do the training. They also have the contract where it's a requirement that there be used for these city works. That's important. That's one leg. The second leg is the corporations. The corporations determine who gets the contracts. The corporations can mandate when they build facilities that African Americans have to be a part of it. Women have to be a part of it. Veterans have to be a part of it. That's the second part. The third part is our elected officials. They have zoning and regulatory power. They have to enforce what they're doing. And the fourth part is the general contractor, the person that got the contract from the corporation that hires the subs. We're going to be smart about this so we can create employment. There is not one staffing agency in the city of Chicago located in the African American community. Why is the crime rate so high in the city of Chicago? Where is this senseless murders coming from? This is the desperation for those that have been locked out and alienated. Ladies and gentlemen, there are solutions to our problems. And we also have to go a little higher now in remembering. I am so sick and tired of election season where people come back reinvented, renewed, saying the same thing that they regurgitate and nothing changes. I want to deal with this not only top down, but bottom up. And we have to hold people accountable. Everybody wants to come to the African American community to smile and look at little Negro boys and girls' faces and promise them a better future. I remember my grandmother, Miss Gertrude Brown. She was down in Florida, and she would tell me about when Miss Eleanor Roosevelt would come to their school, and they had to put Vaseline on their face. And Miss Roosevelt would walk by, and she says that was not a cute woman at all. She would say, "Good morning, poor little Negro boys and girls." Many of these ads now seem the same way. I just see all these politicians running for office hugging on little Negro boys and girls. But when they get in office, you never see them come back. We're going to hold some people accountable and call them out. No money is being invested in our communities. Why is that? It's a mindset. Reverend Martin Luther King taught us we don't just need some philanthropy. We need to deal with the structure so that we are no longer dependent upon your charity so that we can be involved in economics. What about parity? What about reciprocity? Ladies and gentlemen, the same things that the president is fighting for trade, for U.S. industries against China, against Europe. We need those same trade policies for corporations to work with us in our own communities. When you don't know one African American that owns a cellular phone store in your neighborhood, when you don't know one African American that owns a Dunkin' Donut or a major franchise in your neighborhood, when you don't know one African American that owns hotels in your city, when you don't know one African American that owns car dealerships in your city, when you don't know one African American that owns a thing in your city, you gotta be upset about it sometime. Cut us in or cut it out. We need to make sure this building is packed. Our children not only need a Sunday school and a religious education. Take your child to church. Man and woman is a soul. Our children are feeling a void. They're losing their soul. When a child has no inspiration, no motivation, when a child doesn't care, it's nothing wrong with the child. It says we didn't put something in the child that made him go away. And whatever is going wrong with your child, love it, love him, love her. I'm so tired of hearing our parents and people in our neighborhood saying, I can't deal with my child. It's your child. They came out of you. They came through you. Don't get dressed up tomorrow morning going to church, leaving your child at home because you need to have a moment alone to have some peace. Take that one right there that may start doing some crime. Take him to church with you. Then you won't have to put a lock on your bedroom door at home. If I hurt you, maybe that'll inspire you. Remember so you can relieve and relive the pain. We need to do better, my brothers and sisters. We've been to the White House now. We've elected our governors of choice. We've got our state reps. But our economics have not changed. Why? Economics are planned. Economics are organized. If you're not in the plan, you won't get made into the deal. We're not into the economic equation. And why is that? Because sometimes it's not that exciting. It's not that fun to talk about what happened with Lehman Brothers, to talk about banks that have trillions of dollars in JP Morgan Chase and Bank of America and Wells Fargo. People start yawning. People think I'm going to ask them for their credit score next. When you start asking about FICO, and then you say, how does this number affect all of my decisions on whether or not I have to put a deposit down on my cell phone, on my interest rates for the car, on my housing considerations, on being denied an apartment or being denied a mortgage? Why is that? Who is the Fair Isaac Corporation, acronym FICO, based out of Orange County, California, that made a formula that looks like the people that live in that neighborhood, that continue on with the same racist policies on who can report what for credit? You can live in an apartment, but if the landlord doesn't report you as paying, that doesn't build up on your credit score. We need fair consumer credit rights. I'm going to put somebody to sleep talking about their credit score. But who made the formula? It's nothing wrong with you. The formula is bad. You've got a size 10 foot wearing a size 9 shoe. It doesn't work. The things we spend money on don't even get computed into the credit score. Remembering versus reliving the pain and understanding. September 15th, may we never forget the girls in Birmingham. September 15th, may we always remember and look back on what happened with Lehman Brothers. Ladies and gentlemen, what is subprime in closing? Isn't prime the best? So how can you have a subprime loan and pay more and get less? You have a subprime loan. This language didn't even come about until 1993 in the Red Book report from the Federal Reserve Bank of Boston called subprime. And it's basically 3 percentage points that you pay over prime, or 300 basis points. So therefore, you pay more for less. I see one of our founders, Reverend Leak, give him a round of applause. Got to digress for a moment on Reverend Leak. Was the driver for Reverend Martin Luther King while he was alive in Chicago. When my parents were young and in school, they gave my father housing in Chicago. You got to remember and say thank you to those that have never left. Subprime lending. Now the bandits are out. Our credit scores are shot. And now they're using algorithms and formulas and putting it into the computer and saying we don't discriminate. But everything comes back and says we owe more and we deserve less and that we're a higher risk. The risk was taken by Wall Street in derivatives and financial products that they had no understanding of. And we're the ones that paid the price. We were charged the most and received the least. Ladies and gentlemen, we can do better when we know better. I'm going to ask each of you to make a commitment to bring someone with you. Ideally, bring a child. This is a problem that we're going to fix, not just bottom up. We've got a problem that needs to be fixed top down. We need to start with our grandparents that are still alive. You need to tell your children the history. We need to start with the parents. We need then to go to the children. I need you to go into your child's school building. Jim Crow is alive and well. They've taken away all of the restrictions and the segregation at the front door, and now they've taken it to the accounting department and taken the money out of the school. The same school building you went to is not offering the same education that was afforded to you. God bless the children of Birmingham. May we have a solemn place in our hearts and memory and never forget.
That was just such a powerful message. It should inspire all of us. All of you who are watching and sitting here today, we need you to do 3 things. 1, those of you who are in the audience, invite your family and your friends. This is a place that we come to get inspiration, information, and a destination for action. This week, we need you to meet us here on Monday night if you're interested in our economic justice shutdown construction sites. We're going to do streets on Tuesday. We don't want a card. If you don't have a card, we have to register you that day. Well, it's offering time. Those of you who are watching, listening, and are here, if you are not a member, you can join PUSH. It's $35 a year, $15 for students and seniors. Senior means you're over 65, not AARP. I want to thank Spencer Leak for blessing us, as he always does. And he started to offer it out big time. That's why we support the Leak & Sons establishment, because he supports the community. He doesn't just take us when we need him. He takes us and supports us. I don't know how he supports all these churches. Those of you who give us $100 or more, Reverend's not here. I have to get this money so that we can keep going. Those of you, thank you. Reverend Bernardo, thank you so much. Oh my goodness. Wide Awake United Church of Christ, $200, thank you. Anyone else want to give us $100 or more? I'm going to get down to your street. Miss Gurnell told me how to take the offering. I start high, go low. So, those of you who have $50 or more, y'all get ready to sing some real giving music. Those of you who have membership, $35 or more, get the money. Y'all standing there looking right here. If you need an envelope, raise your hand.
Good morning.
Credit card. If you have a credit card, debit card, come right up front. Credit card or debit card. Anybody has something to give, go to the aisle closest to where you're seated and go to the baskets in front of you.
What I'm about to say could mean the world disaster.
That's some giving music.
Change and joy and left down to tears and pain. That love's in need of love today. Don't delay.
Everybody, it's not equal gifts, it's equal sacrifice. Every dime, every dollar is appreciated. Hey, Will Calloway.
Stop it, please, before it's gone too far. The force of evil plans to make you his possession, and into it we let him destroy everybody. We all must take precautionary measures. If joy and peace we treasure, then you hear me when I say, oh, that love's in need of love today. Don't delay, sing yours and right away. It's going round, breaking many hearts. Yeah. Stop it, please. Oh, it's gone too far. Whoa, that love's in need of love today. Don't delay. See, bring your love right away. Oh, love's in need of love today. Don't delay. Send yours in right away. Oh.
Jedediah, would you come to the stage? Will Calloway. Has everyone had an opportunity to give that wanted to give? Won't you stand, join hands as we prepare We're so glad that Miss Daisy's back in the audience. Pray. Reverend Barnado is going to come and give us the benediction. Join hands and we're going to sing We Shall Overcome together. Amen together.
Oh, the gracious God, God of our many years, God of our humble tears, God that has brought us safe upon this way. We come to say thank you for Operation Push. Thank you for its commitment to social justice in our neighborhoods, in the city of Chicago and all across this country. We ask that you continue to let it be a blessing upon us as we continue to stand in the gap and hold up the blood-stained banner of Jesus Christ. Now as we leave from this place, but not from your sight, walk with the walkers and ride with the riders. And blessed be the tide to bind us together. And let the sweet communion of your Holy Spirit rest and abide in these, your people, henceforth and forevermore. And we say together, amen.
Amen. Amen. Amen. Sing.